So I want to know what the call was like to dad saying, "Hey, I'm getting chaptered."
Not good. Not good. He was still he was third major and still in the military, and it was a difficult phone call. And I don't, it was probably one of the that was probably my second hardest call. My first hardest call was calling my great grandfather. Right. He was kind of the patriarch of the family. Right. And actually, he came and put his CIB on me when I graduated Ranger School, as we had received him while from being in Afghanistan while I was at Ranger School, and he came and pinned him on me. So the disappointment, from my great grandfather and my family was significant, and that kind of had me go. That kind of had me spiral into even more of a downward direction at that time.
Welcome to the Leading with Vulnerability podcast. I'm your host, Yuma Barnett. You guys are all very familiar with me and are probably sick of seeing my face in some aspects. But I'm going to tell you what, I've got a special guest. I always say that, and I always say that, but I'm really saying that this time. I got a special guest on here, Cutis Kindred, former member of the 75th Ranger Regiment. He has a very unique story. There's others like him out there that have gone through the things that he's gone through with his service and what he's done after the military. But you don't hear the story a lot. A lot of guys don't want to come out and be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I got RFS and chaptered out of the military." So, on that note, right there, I'm going to pass it over to Curtis. Let him introduce himself, and we'll get into the conversation.
Thanks, Yuma. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you having me on here. Cutis Kindred, live in Dallas Fort Worth area. I was in First Ranger Bat ACO with Yuma for a brief time. I arrived there in April of 2002, and I was exited January of 2004. I think you're going to ask me a couple of questions here in a bit about what had happened but yeah, I'm doing well. Own a couple businesses here in the DFW area, and I'm excited to be on here with you today.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Curtis. And he downplays it. Yeah, he might not have had the most graceful exit from the military, but the time he was there, knowing Curtis, being a leader for Curtis, he was a great ranger. I wish he could have stayed around. I wish the circumstances didn't end the way they would have, because he would have made a great leader further on in the organization. But I think life has a purpose and a plan, even though maybe we don't know what it is. And he's doing great things on the other side, and we're definitely going to get into that. I'm going to kick off with my first question, like I do with most of the podcasts, and ask Curtis here what his definition of vulnerability is.
And vulnerability to me is, you started at a very young age. You put yourself out there, right? Don't know what the end result's going to be, but you're putting yourself out there at the risk of the unknown, right? When you start to walk, you're going to fall multiple times. You probably didn't know that, but you're going to get up and try it again. When you lie to your parents for the first time because you think you're getting in trouble, you're being vulnerable in that point of life. When you sign up in the military, you volunteer, right? You have no idea what that's going to be like. You're being extremely vulnerable, right? When you are getting to 30th AG and not knowing anybody from multiple walks of life, right? When you go to Ranger School, when you go overseas, I mean, you're every day you're being vulnerable at some point, and being vulnerable just means that you're learning and that you are willing to accept challenges, and you're going to put yourself out there to um, to fail at some point, and also learn to be successful. And I think all of us are vulnerable every day, or should be. And that's what vulnerability really means to me.
Yeah, I think you're right there, and I think you might have said something that I haven't heard before is the failure. Vulnerability is failure. I think you're absolutely right, and it's your ability of coping with and dealing with and overcoming said failure, whatever it is. And I think that's a
100%.
great point. So you came from a military family. Dad's a retired sergeant major. So what was it like growing up in a household of a senior NCO? I know it can be a little bit tough for my own kids from time to time. What was it like from your point of view?
Yeah, I think from the time I was 10, I had to start working and making my own money. It was very much so of get out there. You're old enough to push that lawnmower. You can you are you're able to fend for yourself at this point. Also, very strict, very high expectations. My grandfather was a Vietnam veteran. My great grandfather, Korean War veteran. He was a grunt, and just very, very high expectations. Um, you know, get in a fight at school, you better not lose, or you're gonna get home and
Yeah,
get beat again. Or the fact that at 1890 rule was one of the rules of my house, where as soon as you turned 18, you had 90 days to get out, right? So, very just here we're gonna go by the book, and you better follow the book. And if you don't, then you're gonna touch the fire, and the fire's hot.
yeah. Although, when I grew up, I didn't have a military family, but I had a ranching culture, right, which is very similar, right? As
Yeah,
soon as you can walk, you can work type culture. Hated every
yeah.
second of it growing up, but now looking back, I'm so thankful for that. Do you have the same thoughts on some of that?
100%, man. And the thing is too is being in a military family, grew up, I moved around, all my life, right? So every 2 or 3 years, it taught me so many valuable lessons to be able to meet people, right? Not be stuck in that small town, being able to learn different cultures within our country, right? I was born in Wichita, Kansas. I moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, and then we went to El Paso, Texas, Fort Carson, Colorado, Louisiana, Fort Polk, Louisiana. Everybody loves that spot.
Right.
Then, my parents ended up getting divorced. I went to Iowa, where a small town, nobody knew outsiders, right? Uh, cool thing was is that the new guy always, all the girls liked the new guy. So you
That's
were
right.
you're always getting that attention, but you also get the bad attention from their boyfriends not being happy about it.
Yeah.
Um, and then Korea for a little bit, and then back to Iowa. So three different high schools. But yeah, it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot in my career of how to talk to people, not be shy, and just be if you want people to like you, be a good person.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Absolutely right. So you end your time, you grow up, you reach that 18 and 90 rule that you're at, and you decided to join the military. What led to joining the military? Why the 75th? Did you come in with one of those option 40 contracts? What was kind of your path into the military? Why'd you follow in the family tradition kind of there?
I'm gonna be vulnerable here. So I actually started out trying to go into the Coast Guard with two of my best friends from high school, and the Coast Guard wouldn't accept me. I got in a little bit of trouble, and they didn't have enough waivers for me to get in. So um, my next option, I knew I didn't want to go to college. I knew I wasn't cut out for that. So I went to Army recruiter. My dad was still in at the time, and talked to the guy and took the ASFAB, all that, and he said, "Listen, he's like, I can give you a 5 year deal, $20,000 sign on bonus, and I can give you option 40 for airborne school and a Ranger contract." And I was like, "I'm gonna show that Coast Guard guy he's an idiot, and I'm gonna go full tilt, right, balls to the wall with some Ranger stuff." So I arrived at 30th AG September 5th, which was 22 years ago yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah. So,
Wow, that's it's amazing how fast time flies, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit as we go. So, you come into the 75th, you go through everything that we go through to get there. The your infantry guy come to Fort Benning, hit airborne school, hit RIP, and then head to 175. And you got to 175 at a very unique time to the organization. Uh, it was right after 9/11 had happened. First Battalion was deployed, I think, when you arrived, correct? And you
yep.
came to 1st Platoon Alpha Company 175, which had just, about a month prior to you getting there, or just prior to you getting there, the Battle of Takagar, Roberts Ridge, all that goes down. My roommate Matt was killed. We lost the other, service members up on the hill, the other Rangers. and you get put into Matt's room, which was mine and Matt's room for a long time. And I remember the first time we really met each other is when we came back into the barracks from that rotation, and you're in Matt's room. I was a little bit taken back that somebody was in there other than Matt. You were in there. I just kind of want to know from your perspective, what was it like coming to the regiment? But not only you coming to the regiment as a new place, you're coming from the regiment where they just returned from combat and the regiment hadn't been in combat in a long time up to that point. What was that experience like? What were your feelings as that platoon was walking through the door?
Originally I had no clue what the hell I walked into. It was a completely different atmosphere. It was everything different than what we had been anticipating, right? I even think there was a difference between, if you went, I had some buddies that I graduated RIP with, that went to BCO, went to SECO, and their first, you know, time getting to battalion was completely different than ours. I mean, I was like you said, I was in Matt's bed. I was in the squad, uh, where they had lost Rangers, right, and the platoon as well. And it was uh, it was definitely eye opening. I think that spending probably three three or 4 weeks in Savannah jail probably would have been easier, maybe even longer than being on that first floor, at first bat. I mean, you couldn't get away with anything. You couldn't be seen without getting fucked with, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It was you know, if it was in today's military, it would have been a whole different story. It was,
yeah.
it was. But here's the deal: it was. I would never change that experience.
Oh yeah.
Of being there. I mean, some of the best people I've ever met in my life. Taught me a lot of things, and seeing the emotions, the roller coaster of emotions of everybody that got back at that point. You don't see it while you're in it because you're in the force, right? But looking back and realizing all the pain and everything that people were going through, that was a huge learning experiment for me.
Yeah. I think that's right. I've never really thought about it that way. For you saw some things that nobody's like really ever seen for or hadn't seen in a long time. Was we come back, we still hadn't really processed losing Matt and Mark and Brad in first platoon, right? We're still processing that. We went to the memorial there shortly after in the cathedral in Savannah, and you got to see the regiment. Not only like you're this you don't have two scrolls now, you're this new private that's not rocking stereo scrolls. uh, so you get to feel it from that side to where we just don't like you because
Yeah,
not only are you a private, but you don't fit in. And then second, you got to see the other side where you see all these big macho tough guys like we're like bawling our eyes out, losing our shit, trying to deal with stuff emotionally from losing our brothers overseas. That was just had to be a kind of a surreal experience for you, was it?
man. You know, Trying to adapt into that into that brotherhood at the time was extremely difficult. Just um, because you didn't know what everybody had gone through, right? I didn't know the pain that you were going through at the time, right? I didn't realize a lot of the um, I just didn't know, right? It was a lot of unknowns, and um, I'd never been in a situation where so many people were so fucking angry, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, just, I mean, they turn their hurt feelings and sadness into just anger, right? And not that it was the wrong way to deal with it, right? I mean, this was brand new for a lot of folks, right? And they, you know, being woken up at 3:15, right, 15 minutes after the bar closed in Savannah was a normal morning, right? To get your ass smoked, right? That was a normal morning. If you wanted to get out of the barracks, you were crawling through the half windows to not be seen.
Yeah.
to get your ass smoked. So the good thing is I got extremely strong, and
Yeah,
I knew I learned some good things to teach my kids on if they start jacking around, you
that's
know,
right. That's right.
low crawls and all kinds of smoking tactics.
Yeah. It was definitely a different era in the regiment than it is now, right? And like you, I wouldn't change anything from my first couple years there. I wouldn't change it for the
Yeah,
world, right? Wouldn't change it all for all the butterflies and rainbows in the world, right? Uh, I will say, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your 75th time and how it impacted you, but I'm going to just for the listeners that I mean, a lot of people don't know Curtis the Ranger, and I'm just going to tell you, this guy was a hell of a ranger, right? If you're listening, you don't know, he physically fit, never bitched, moaned, and griped, complained about work, working his ass off, getting smoked. Um, always the hardest worker, always the first one on the run. I mean, you were like you you were kind of like you loved you could party, you could be serious, you could train, you could do it all. You were a great ranger, right? The problem
yeah,
was
appreciate it.
you walked a line that all of us walked. You got caught. A lot of us didn't, right? That's just the way it went. And we're going to talk about that in a second. But the time you spent in the 75th, you were there long enough. You saw as a private, you went and got your Ranger tab, did some stuff, deployed a few times. What, in the grand scheme of your life, looking back 20 plus years later now, what is that organization and that time you spent in the 75th? What has that meant to you?
And it means everything to me. I mean, it was a short time. There was a long time where I was ashamed of how everything went down, right? And you're right. I walked the line on when I was there, but I was I appreciate all the nice things you said. I definitely was. I would show up for work and I would get shit done, and then I would take care of business after work, right?
Yeah,
And maybe two. Nothing was half-assed. Everything was 110%, right?
yeah, yeah,
On both sides of the spectrum. But what it means for me today is the discipline, the no quit, the intestinal fortitude to really be vulnerable every day. Like I mentioned in the beginning, is don't be afraid of failure. Right. In order for you to go through the things that you go through to get to battalion, the things that you go through to get uh, to not be a shitbag, to get out of that cherry status, to get through Ranger School, right? To be side by side with folks overseas. It's it's most people have never been through that will never understand uh, the guts, the heart, the mindset it takes to get through all that. And I carry that with me, I think, every day in what I do. Right?
yeah,
You just have to no matter some of the things I would always say to myself when I was actually in battalion before we go on a jump or go, get on a range or whatnot. It's like they can't kill me. It's this looks like it's gonna suck. I could die, but they're not gonna intentionally kill me, right?
right, right.
So those are a lot of things, and I still say some of those things today. It's like, but did you die? And are you gonna die? Is this are you gonna make it through here? And those are just some of the things I keep in my mind on a daily
Yeah,
basis. And
yeah,
it could be worse. I've
yeah.
been in worse situations. It could be worse.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, we could talk for hours on the impact that the organization has probably had on us, and I think you realize it the older you get and the more you reflect on it. But on your exit from the military, obviously not the most desirable exit, not the
Yep.
one that anybody dreams of. But there's been countless number of Rangers. Like I said, I've walked a line many times. Got back to my house. Wake up the next morning, go outside and look and go, who drove home last night? And then somebody goes, hey, you did, asshole. And you go, oh shit. I did,
Yeah.
and I knew, like, I had one of those eye-opening moments where I was like, if I don't change my ways, I'm not gonna one, I'm not gonna kill myself, and two, I'm gonna lose my tan beret. Uh, you fell on the other side of the line. What was that like when what's your story when you got sent out of army, sent out of regiment?
Yeah. Yeah. So I actually was late to formation one morning, and we'd been partying out at Tybee, and woke up some random chick's house. You know, didn't know where my truck was. Had to get them up to get out to my get to my truck and make it back to post. So it was a rough night, and there was a 10% piss test done that morning, and um, there was many of folks that we all worked with that uh, you know lived off base, had the good shit, right? And so I pissed off for smoking pot. And so when I got questioned about that, I had to go to CID, and uh, I was poked and prodded, basically, uh, interrogated over and over about where I got the weed from, and I just they caught me in a lie about. I told them I got it from some SCAD student, and they told me that if I would have told on somebody, right, if I would have told on the person I actually got it from, then they would have let me go, which I knew was bullshit.
Right.
You know, because it was another ranger. So um, they said, "All right, we're gonna kick you out, not necessarily for smoking pot, but for interference with official acts and not being a good soldier." And so they gave me they chaptered me out. So they busted me from E4 down to E1, gave me like 2 months extra duty, and I was a no rank tab guy walking around
I
regiment.
remember that. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah, with a combat scroll. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
So, I'm gonna add something there. There's gonna be people that listen to this and stuff. And they're gonna be like, "Why are you sharing this story? It sheds bad light on the regiment, right?" And I'm on the opposite. Like, if we don't share our stories and we don't share our failures, people are gonna repeat the shit. They're gonna continue to do the dumb stuff. So for all those out there that don't want to hear the story, turn it off. But I know there's somebody listening that's walking a fine line right now, and hearing this is going to hopefully put them back into the right? Because if we don't share what we did wrong, if we just keep talking about all the badass shit we did, we're never going to get better. We're never going to go to that next evolution. So if you're out there thinking of that, you probably don't belong here in the first place. So I want to know what the call was like to dad saying, "Hey, I'm getting chaptered."
not good. Not good. He was still he was third major and still in the military, and it was a difficult phone call, and I don't it was probably one of the that was probably my second hardest call. My first hardest call was calling my great grandfather, right? He was kind of the patriarch of the family, right? And actually, he came and put his CIB on me when I graduated Ranger School, as we had received him while from being in Afghanistan while I was at Ranger School, and he came and pinned him on me. So the disappointment, from my great grandfather and my family was significant, and that kind of had me go. That kind of had me spiral
Yeah.
into even more of a downward direction at that time.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about kind of your post-military life, and I mean, you started at the bottom and where you are now. But before we go out of the military stuff, it wasn't all bad days, right? You had some really good days. We had some good times. Me and you had some good times, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Uh, what is one of the if first, I might know the answer to this, but if you just verify, what was your most challenging day in uniform, or your most difficult day that you had while you wore the uniform?
And honestly, the most challenging day for me was the day that I was told I was getting busted down and I was no longer going to ranger. Right,
Yeah,
that was the hardest time for me. It was I. It's almost like I lost a sense of purpose in life at that point. Right, it's very difficult. Um, getting to battalion was the biggest accomplishment I had ever had, and I was living my dream of doing what I wanted, being amongst some of the best people in the world, And like I said, the hardest day was when I lost that, right? Because
Yeah.
at that same time, nobody wants to be around the cancer, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's very tough. And those are things that you don't think about, right? When you walk the line, is that uh, you can't be associated with the cancer at that time, or you might get looped in with
Yeah.
the shenanigans, right? And that was the hardest part because it's taken a long time for people to and myself to really understand that we were all human then, and we
Yeah.
are now, and we have good. We're good people, just made bad decisions at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tough part of about the job, from even from the perspective where I saw you get booted is I considered you a friend. I considered I was like one of your leaders. But
Yeah,
then we have to push you away, right? And that's not easy to do. It's not easy to push people away that you have, that you respect and have fun with. And it sucks that it's hard to sit there and watch Kindred, who is a stellar, tab spec four on a trajectory, team leader, squad leader trajectory, and then all of a sudden you're like a nothing, no, a nothing skeeter
yeah,
wing, tab, right?
yeah.
It's hard to have to push people away in your life and keep going because the organization isn't going to stop. The war wasn't going to stop. We had to keep
Oh.
going. But that is a challenging part of it that sometimes you don't think about again until later in life. But on the flip side, you had a lot of good days. Is there a day that you look back on in regiment and just like, ah, yeah, that was the day. I wish I could do that day again.
Yeah, man, there's so many of them. You know, I think that when we were going through um, in OIF one and just stucking through some of the shitty sandstorms
Yeah.
and just kind of relying on each other and some of the dumbass games that we would do and play. Man, those are just the best times that
Yeah.
some
Yep.
of the times I remember. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and when it boils down to that, there's just so many things that you could say were like a best day, but just being with the boys, right? Sometimes
yeah,
just being in the same vehicle, going through the same
yeah,
sandstorm, watching everybody take a dump in the same cat hole. I mean, it's just things like
right.
that there's nobody in the civilian world that will ever understand it, right? And there's
Not
only
not
and
even a little
there's
bit.
a select few that will, and you look back on those times and you cherish the moments when you can all get back together and kind of remember those times. I definitely understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
So now on the civilian side, you transition out. Transition, more difficult because of the circumstances you went to. You're not transitioning on your terms, basically. You're
right.
transitioning on the Army's terms, on the military's terms. What was your transition like? What was that process like? What did it kind of look like?
Yeah, it was a rude awakening, man. It was one day you had some security there, and then the next day you had to figure shit out, and your family's not happy with you, right? They're thinking, man, you had it going, and you fucked it up. Um, you know, don't come back leaning on us, right? You need to figure shit out. You got to grow up. And so I had to. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. Never thought about what I wanted to do, um, other than stay in the military career for a career. So I actually stayed in Savannah for a bit. I got a job working at a drywall factory. Worked there
Yeah,
for a year. Worked there straight, and bought a house in Savannah. Then still pretty beat up on myself, right? Got into a little, kept walking the line, doing stupid shit, and I ended up quitting that job and got into the golf industry. Moved out to California, worked in the golf industry for a while. Uh, Walking the line out there was a lot easier, so I continued going down probably wrong paths for for a couple of years. Then I moved to Arizona and met a mentor, really good friend of mine, and he was a sober cat, and just never did anything. And he was 26, 27 years old, just had all kinds of greatness um, going on in his life, right? Four rental homes, driving the best vehicles, always had tons of cash on him. And I was like, God, I could be like that guy. I just need to stop being a fucking idiot, right? And so I kind of I got back down to a bit of my foundation of understanding, don't quit, don't be a failure. I've kind of hit rock bottom. I did hit rock bottom, and I screwed it back on and got into sales. I was doing alarm sales door to door in Arizona. Um, at that time, sorry, is this? Yeah. At that time, the company, it was 2008, 2009. The housing market had crashed. They had moved me out to Dallas, Texas. In 2009, they closed their doors for the company I worked for. So 2010, I had an office full of people. I had some skills. I had the attitude. I had the, Tesla fortitude and the vulnerability to get out there and say, I'm going to take this on my own, and started my own alarm business in 2010. And then I grew it from there, and I've opened up multiple different companies. Been successful, and a lot of them had a lot of failures. Right, I've failed multiple times. I still fail. I still make mistakes, but I see all of those failures as learning opportunities, and that's what's going to get me to my next win. Right, if I'm not failing, then I'm not growing, and that's
Yeah.
that's that's really how I feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I mean, you give the great overview of kind of where you went to where you are. To recap, just a little, you chaptered out of the military. Yes. You don't have a
Yep.
college degree, right?
No college degree.
You don't
No.
have an MBA. You don't have an MBA. You didn't go to Stanford or Columbia or all this stuff that I always preach on here. Education, education, education. You moved around. You did blue collar industry. You moved into a this golfing industry, which I'll caveat and say this guy could drive a ball like 600 yards, or at least he could back in the day. We always wanted him on our best ball teams.
Yeah.
But I say all that you're not, because when I just pulled up your LinkedIn. If I looked into your LinkedIn, what does it say? Chief Executive Officer, right? And I'm not gonna put a number behind where you're at in life now, but I'll just tell people Curtis is doing okay. But a lot of people would have quit, right? And I've seen a lot of people quit and they put a 45 in their mouth, or they continue to drink the Jack Daniels and then they follow it with Percocets and their life is over. And you righted the ship when everything that, if you look on paper, you shouldn't be where you are today. Um, what got
Yeah.
you there? What is it that was it getting just breaking back down to your foundation of kind of how you grew up, in the home and in early in the Ranger Regiment, and being honest with yourself, looking in the mirror. What was it that got you on the right path?
Man. When you're going down that path, I was quitting for a long time, right? I was going down that path, man. And this is another vulnerability, but I was doing 1 to 2 8 balls of blow a day, right? And it was a lot. I was quitting every single day, and I just had to, when you're going through RIP or basic or whatever school that you're going through, right? You can't quit, right? They're looking to make you quit, and I was letting life kick me in the nuts every day, right? And you've got to realign yourself. You have to dig deep. You have to find your purpose, your why. Why am I here, right? Why
Yeah,
why do I keep drinking all of this, Jack? Why do I keep doing all this blow? Why have I put this gun to my head multiple times but not pulled the trigger, right?
yeah,
It's
yeah,
because you still have a purpose here. You still have something to finish. And the faster you figure that out, the faster you put all that shit down, the faster that you realize that there's another purpose for you, and why you're here, the faster you will excel, and you will win again, and you will get past the demons. You'll get past all the shit that you're dealing with.
yeah,
That
yeah,
stuff that stuff does nothing good for you, and it doesn't help you get past anything. It's just a mask.
yeah, yeah. absolutely. And I appreciate you sharing and being honest. And there's something I want to talk about, right? Come out of the dark space a little bit, come back over to the light. Um, I think, when I talk to a lot of transition folks in transition or people that are in the transition space, sales kind of has a dirty word or a dirty connotation. Like people, I think a lot of veterans, their only really encounter with sales is like the car dealer on Victory Drive, right? Who's trying to run them for 25% interest.
Yeah, miles program. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that. But there's everything in life is kind of sales and communication, right? Especially if you own
yeah,
your own business, right? You've got to be able to sell yourself, and you've got really good at that, right? And I think that intrinsically, it's inside of a lot of Type A Ranger type personalities to be really driven and good at sales. Can you speak on it a little bit?
yeah. I think that sales is in every aspect of your life. It doesn't matter if you're a salesperson or not. You're always trying to sell somebody on you or a product or something that you want, right? You had to sell your wife to marry you at some point, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you have to sell somebody to give you a job, right? Um, if you're in a sales job, you're selling a product, right? So, um, you know, I think that so many guys in range of time or special ops community could crush it because there's such an adrenaline that I get, right? Being in sales, right? It's endless. It's an endless cap of opportunity to where you get to determine your income, you get to determine your success, and the only person that you lose against is yourself,
Yeah,
right? You Sales is very lucrative. I don't know why it has the dirty word it does, but I
yeah,
don't see many, even mediocre salespeople make a great income. And it's not all about income. It's all about, being happy with what you're doing, right? But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, right? If you're going to go work for an organization, you know, sales is definitely part of every industry that's out there.
yeah. Yep, you're absolutely right, and I think we could probably do a whole other podcast on sales and the art of the sale and the stuff that you did in the sales world to get where you are today, and maybe we'll do that someday if somebody wants to hear more of your story there. So
All about vulnerability. Yep.
it is. So as we get closer to closing this thing out here. Um, I want just a couple words of advice for people out there looking. You've been successful in business. To anybody out there starting a new business or thinking about going the entrepreneurial route, what do you think? What are some key takeaways to having success?
Yeah. Some of the things that I talk to guys about are understanding where they want to be. What's their end goal, right? A lot of folks like to think they understand where they want to be, but they don't write it down. They don't do any research on it. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he says, "Man, I want to make." He's getting out of the service. He's transitioning now. 10 years in Marsoc, and he's saying, "Man, I want to be I want to go into this industry, and I want to make $200,000 a year. That way, I can help be a power team with my wife, right?" And I said, "Okay, just do me a favor, real quick. Go look up what you want to be and see what the median income for that industry is, right?" And it's really important that you understand your left and right boundaries, right? What you can do, what you can't do, because there was additional businesses you wanted to do on top of that. But also understand: am I doing a transactional business or am I doing a reoccurring business? Am I going to do something that's going to pay me one time, or am I going to do something that's going to continue paying me over and over again? And one of the things I always tell them is you've got to know what your capability is uh, before you jump both feet into an industry, right? And a lot of folks say, "Hey, I want to go into this industry," not knowing what the top earning potential is. and then they get down in that path, and 5 years later they're miserable, and they're like, God, I wish I would have done this, I would have done something different.
Yeah.
um, and that's some of the biggest advice I say is make sure that you really look into what you want to do, and understand what your long term goal is going to be.
Yeah. Great advice. It's kind of baffling sometimes for somebody I know spent 20 years. You're talking about there is military planning. It's the same shit. You know, you're not just going to jump into Paktika province, Afghanistan, and go hit a target without doing a deep dive of your left and your right and your far and your near and your deep and your Casevac HLZs and your primary and alternates. It's the same thing, right? But so, like, sometimes we forget that the training we had in the military translates 100% to the other side. You just gotta
Uh,
change the lingo a little bit, right? And, I still
Correct.
struggle to do that, but it's great advice. So, somebody that's transitioning out of the military, especially somebody, let's say, they're 21, 22, E4, E5, you transitioned not on your terms, but you still had a transition. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So if it's um, somebody that's transitioning on their terms, right? Have a plan, right? Just like you spoke about. Have a plan of what you're going to do afterwards, right? It's unless you already have. I mean, there's some organizations out there that do a great job of
Yeah,
prepping you before that, and getting you ready. 90, 180 days prior to your exit. Um, Utilize those organizations as much as possible. Um, if you're getting out not on your terms, get your shit together, right?
yeah,
Don't let it drag you down for the next 3 years, right? Because it's a downward spiral. Negativity is the most attractive thing to the world, right? And if you are in a negative place and you want to stay in that negative place, you're just going to be in a negative place for a long time. So try to
yeah,
find the positives. Try, you fucked up one time, two times, whatever. Don't do it again. Learn from touching the fire, and don't quit, right? There's no
yeah.
reason to quit.
Yep, 100%, 100%. And then final question to ask it to everybody. If you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what advice would you give him?
Don't be a shithead, man. Don't walk the line. You know, um, don't think that you're smarter than everybody, right? Don't think that you're gonna get away with with things, right? And just realize that if you make a mistake, things happen for a reason, and you can undo it, you can fix it, and you can come back from being down low, right?
Yeah,
If I could have, you know, I would have done a lot of things different, and but I learned from every mistake that I made, um, and I learned from mistakes I make today, yesterday, and I'll learn from the mistakes now. And as long as you realize that that's a learning opportunity for you to grow, right, and don't get down on yourself, you'll make it.
yeah,
Keep growing.
yeah. Absolutely, Curtis. I really appreciate you coming on. And just for the listeners, Curtis, 22 years ago, he was walking through the gates of Fort Benning down there. But he hadn't forgot where he came from. Curtis, you recently, linked in with the Honor Foundation, which I talk about all the time. If you go join an Honor Foundation cohort, there's a possibility that Curtis could be your mentor that you have in there, which is a great one. But even though he didn't have the best exit from the military, he still is taking care of us, right? You still take care of us and watch out for us and do great things. And one of the great things about the military, you and I hadn't talked for years, double digit years. And you called me a few years ago and said, "Hey, I want to do something for a military organization." We put together that golf event for the Honor Foundation, raised like $70,000 for the Honor Foundation. uh, it's amazing, and it just goes to show how much the military can impact somebody's life. And I'll say, thank you for your service, but thank you for what you continue to do. Thank you for being open. Hopefully, people can learn from your mistakes. Hopefully, people can learn from you and become better people on the other side of uniform with your work you're doing with THF. I really appreciate it. And just thanks for coming on. And for everybody out there watching and listening, do all that stuff I need you to do, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode out here.